I challenge you to a duel.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 7 of the Movie Duel podcast. My name is Peter and I am your host. Each episode of the Movie Duel podcast we pick a subject that's based around movies and myself and my co-host then select a film that we think best fits that subject. Only one overriding rule, and that's we can't pick the same movie more than once. This time around, I'm joined once again by the fantastic Nicole Davis, and we will be discussing what we consider to be the best liminal space horror. As mentioned at the top of the last episode, if you are interested in becoming a co-host on the Movie Duel podcast, you can contact us by the Facebook page or by emailing us at movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. Now, just as a little warning at the top of the episode, Nicole does mention this when she begins her presentation about her choice, but her choice does include a lot of themes centred around suicide and depression. So anybody who's possibly suffering with those kind of issues may not wish to listen to our discussion. We don't go too deep into that, but I would hate for anybody to get to that part of the episode and not be warned about it. So, without further ado, let's head on over to our main discussion.
Now, shall we begin?
So, welcome back to the podcast, Nicole Davis. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm happy to be back. Fortunately, I have, taken antidotes to one of the movies that I watched, which was, I find, kind of depressing at the end, but doing pretty well. I recently saw Cocaine Bear, which, no spoilers. It's a very silly movie, but it's a lot of fun, and it's okay to enjoy the deaths in the movie because the real-life incident it is based on, no one died.
No.
So
The real-life incident's actually quite boring compared to...
It is, yes.
to what was in this film. I did hear somebody recounting the true life story, and it is just incredibly boring.
Yeah, but you can go visit the actual bear, which I believe is at a Tennessee state park and has been nicknamed Pedro Escobar.
Lovely. Not Scar Bear.
No.
It doesn't work quite as well, though, I suppose, does it? Okay, so... See, last time you were here, we were discussing the worst video game adaptation. Have you managed to get over that?
Yes, I forgive you.
Well, I just sort of flicking through the TV channels the other day, and Lara Croft Tomb Raider was on. So I thought,
Which one?
Let's watch a bit of that. The original Angelina
Jolie
debacle.
Right.
I completely forgot that Daniel Craig was in that film.
Yeah, baby Daniel Craig.
And Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones, he was in it as well. He was the bad guy.
I think so, yeah.
But there we go. So one of the conditions of you coming back to the podcast was I would allow you to pick the subject this time around. So would you like to let everybody know?
I chose a best/favorite Liminal-Space Horror film, which has been on my mind a lot just because I watch a lot of YouTube Let's Plays, and the Backrooms games have become very popular. And I don't know if anyone's not familiar with the Backrooms who's listening, but it's an online story. Someone posted a photo of supposedly creepy pictures, and it was of this sort of empty yellow office space with yellow carpet and tinted yellow lighting, and gave people an eerie feeling. And somebody wrote a caption for it that said, if you no-clip out of reality, you can find yourself in the back rooms with old, moist carpet and the madness of mono yellow and the buzzing of the fluorescent lights. And that sort of blew up the collective imagination of the internet, and it's become its whole own beast of of a hypothetical space. You know, it's so strange to have so much lore for a place that does not exist.
Yeah.
But it also whetted an appetite for liminal space horror games, and that made me think of, are there liminal space horror movies?
Yeah.
And I think there are. I think we'll be talking about a few of them.
Well, I think when you suggested it to me and you sort of looking it up on the internet about, you know, what a liminal space horror movie is.
Right.
There's not a lot, you know. It almost seems reasonably hard to define, and I think a lot of interpretation is to be had with it.
Right. If you'll indulge me, I've got some things that I wrote up about liminal and what liminal spaces are and what liminal space horror is. Okay, so liminal comes from the Latin limen, which means threshold. Liminal can mean something that is barely perceptible, like a sound you can only just hear. It's on the threshold of hearing, or something you can kind of see, but you can't quite make out what it is. And we more often use subliminal. So subliminal things are just below our threshold of perception. Liminal states are states of being between state A and state B, like the teen years, between childhood and adulthood. Drowsiness between waking and sleeping, unemployment, the unpaid, unstructured time between job A and job B, the time between what was and what will be. Liminal spaces can be anywhere between point A and point B, places that aren't necessarily meant for long-term occupation, but stops along the way, the means of transport between places, or the path of travel itself. They can include places like a doorway, tunnels, a hotel, the inside of an airplane, or a roadway. In recent years, a new definition has arisen. Spaces are considered liminal when they are designed by and for people, but they are now empty, either because they're in off hours, off season, or abandoned. Because you see it's empty, you don't really expect anyone to be there, but because it's designed for people, you can easily imagine someone there, maybe just around that wall or in that shadowy corner over there. And that tension produces an eerie feeling that's called kenopsia. It can also create fear and anxiety because you feel at any moment that something could happen, but you aren't sure what.
Okay.
So this subject was my pick, and the main parameter that I set was that in choosing a liminal horror film, the space or spaces themselves where the film takes place have to contribute materially to the horror. And a sub-parameter I set for myself was to leave out the most obvious, best-known example of liminal space horror, which is The Shining, at least in my opinion. That's the big one. Nearly every area of the Overlook Hotel is a wildly creepy liminal space. But I wanted to go past the most obvious choice and try to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Well, I think that either of us would be hard pressed to pick something that's going to go up against The Shining.
Yeah.
Especially for this subject.
Right.
I think it's really a defining sort of film in terms of being a liminal space, really. It's 30 years before people even considered it to be a thing, I suppose.
I would say so, yeah. And I mean, of course, Kubrick was such a master that, like, even when it's not liminal, in the scene in the gold room where there are lots of people in the background, it's still creepy because those people should not be there. And they're all from the 1920s or something, or the 30s, I think.
No charge to you, Mr. Torrance. No charge? Your money's no good here.
So, still manages to hold the tone.
Okay, so with it being your choice of subject, it was down to me to pick first.
Yeah.
And I just want to preface my choice with I did not completely misunderstand this being liminal space horror, and I was well aware it was Liminal-Space Horror. My choice was Event Horizon from 1997.
A haunted ship.
I'm getting some really strange readings in here.
A missing crew.
This place is a tomb.
DJ, where are you?
And infinite evil. This ship has been beyond the boundaries of our universe. Who knows what it's brought back with it?
Vacate! I want off this ship.
You can't leave. She won't let you. Event Horizon. Rated R.
Directed by Paul Anderson, or Paul W.S. Anderson, depending on which point you pick up his career. Starring Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Jolie Richardson and Kathleen Quinlan. The synopsis is that a deep space research vessel, the Event Horizon, reappears after going missing for 7 years, and the crew of the Lewis and Clark are sent to find out where she has been and what's happened to her crew. First of all, this is one of my favourite films ever. It would be in my top 30. We'll go that far.
Okay.
I wouldn't like to say top 10, but it would certainly sit somewhere quite close to one of my favourite films of all time.
I would argue that the effects are a little bit janky for it to be higher than top 30. At least that's that would be a factor for me. Maybe I'm being judgmental.
I mean, it's like a lot of films in that sort of late 90s, probably even early 2000s, where it's on that cusp of films going to full sort of CGI. Mm-hmm. There's that sort of blend of practical effects with the CGI.
Right. The practical effects still look great. They look fantastic. The miniatures look fantastic. Yeah. It's just the putting them together that you can see the seams, let's say.
It's the sort of floaty stuff in zero gravity that looks really dodgy. And doesn't really hold up. This was Paul Anderson's follow-up to Mortal Kombat, his second sort of big Hollywood film.
I forgot he directed Mortal Kombat.
What he wanted to make was somewhere a sort of space set film that was comparable to The Shining and Robert Wise's The Haunting. They were the two main sort of inspirations for this film, which you can see in a lot of scenes.
I can kind of see that, especially The Haunting, really.
Yes, definitely. You know, the reason I picked it based on this subject was that the ship is this sort of... Obviously, the story is, as you go through the film, that it's gone through this self-made black hole into effectively another dimension, which is classed as a dimension of pure chaos towards the end of the film, and comes back as this sort of entity, really. So that space is sort of living, and it's almost breathing and affecting all the people that are on board. Just to talk about the ship, because I think, as we said, you know, the effects and the production design, especially on the ship, I think are really stunning in places.
Definitely.
They based the design of the Event Horizon, the ship itself, on Notre Dame Cathedral. Which is where all the sort of churchy stained glass windows and these sort of alcoves. Is that the right word in the church? Alcove.
Nave.
Nave. That's the word. It's the word I'm looking for.
I grew up Catholic.
You know, they're all based on that, and even the ship itself. So the main sort of thrusters are based on the spires from Notre Dame Cathedral, turned on their side, and the main sort of corridor is seen as the main sort of aisle down the middle of the cathedral.
Oh, that's funny, because nerd that I am, thought it looked a lot like a Klingon bird of prey.
Yes, it does. It does in a way, but I don't think that's where the inspiration came from.
No, I didn't think it did, but I thought it was interesting, and I think it looks a little bit 2001 with like that sort of giant gantry section in between the front of the ship and the back. There's sort of this long tube in between. And
then you've got this room with the gravity drive in, with this twirling sort of
gyroscope?
These rings, I suppose.
Kinda?
Yes, it's sort of the rings that sort of bend round. And it's just stunning to think that they made that full size. I think that was very much his sort of space jockey set from compared to sort of Alien.
That's why it looks so good. They built it full scale.
let me see if I can get some power up.
That's the core, the gravity drive. The heart of the ship.
We say, it's really one of those film. It's a sort of American financed film, shot in England, Pinewood Studios, big sets. You don't necessarily get those films anymore. A lot of the big films, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Alien, all shot at sort of Pinewood, and you don't necessarily get that anymore. I don't think. Or you don't get that feeling,
Right.
with modern films. I don't think.
Right.
You can sort of see.
You can if you get a director with enough swing, you can still get that done periodically. Like for Inception, Christopher Nolan, they built that huge rotating set for the hotel sequences. But I have a question, since you've seen this film so many times. Why is everything in the gravity drive room so pointy? Why are there spikes everywhere? It looks like Hellraiser.
You've probably just answered your own question, to be fair. That's probably why. I think it's meant to look threatening. This gravity drive, although it's supposed to, Sam Neill's very character, Dr. Weir, is very proud of it, and the fact that it can create a black hole and transport the ship from one end of the universe to the other, and it's ultimately doesn't do this major world-changing thing that he wants it to do. It does quite the opposite.
Right.
And I don't think there was any sort of research I've done. There doesn't seem to be any conscious reason that there's spikes everywhere. I could pretend to be quite clever and say it's something to do with magnetic fields, and
I think actually that is the explanation in the movie. Something magnetic field generators.
Well, I know the rings that sort of circling around, they're supposed to be sort of the magnetic sort of keep it, keep the black hole from expanding or something,
right,
like that. I don't think it's a film where the science is necessarily a big part of the story. It doesn't need to make too much sense.
No.
You've got this whole scene where Dr. Weir is explaining how it works.
Yeah.
Point A to point B and folding space.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan, you hack. You stole this from Event Horizon.
Yeah. So I think that's all just sort of designed to look really unnerving and really threatening.
It succeeds.
Yeah, I think it's a stunning looking picture. To be fair, dodgy CGI aside, it's shot really well. Adrian Biddle, who was the cinematographer, worked on Alien and quite a few other sort of big films. Again, you can sort of see that experience on the screen, really.
Right.
It's got this sort of greenness, I suppose. That's the only word I can think. It's sort of
artificial lighting tint, like from computer screens and panels.
And it looks, again, similar to Alien. I keep talking about Alien, but it's a good reference point.
Sure.
It looks lived in.
Right.
It's not glossy 2001 kind of space travel. It's that almost like the truckers in space analogy that they used for Alien. But to get back to the ship being this sort of liminal space, or what I considered to be a liminal space, was that it's coming back as a life force. It's affecting these people in different ways, really. Whether it's playing to their guilt, probably for the most part. I think everybody's sort of guilty about something. Everybody has something in their lives.
Right.
We don't get these sort of visions for everybody on the crew.
Yeah, it sort of reminded me of Flatliners, where it's the original 1990 film. The characters take turns forcing death. They go hypothermic and they get injected with particular drugs, and they say, revive me after this many minutes. And when they come back, they're sort of haunted by their past sins, or what they believe to be their past sins.
I've never seen Flatliners, to be honest.
Oh, it's fun. Joel Schumacher.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right, okay. I'll have to...
But so what the liminal space that I noticed, I did a rewatch of Event Horizon, which I have not seen in at least a decade anyway, is there's a core failsafe issue and Dr. Weir has to go into a maintenance tunnel.
Yes.
And the maintenance tunnel is an absolutely beautiful bit of design that was probably not that expensive to build. And it's just this square cross-section tunnel full of these panels covered in green lights, and it almost looks like writing, and it's sort of a cross between Cube and the Matrix sort of look to it.
Yes. It's almost sort of emerald greeny.
Yes,
sort of.
yes.
Yeah.
And, that's clearly a space that's designed by humans. Although in this case it looks kind of like a human's never been in there because it's pristine. But it is, it was very striking. I liked that a good bit.
Yeah, well, I think there's bits sort of later on in the picture, although they're not necessarily active sort of liminal spaces within the story. But we'll get to those because I've got a sort of section of notes on that.
Sure.
When we get to the more extreme bits of this film. But I think what really helps the picture is the casting in this film. I think it's really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all the performances. Some of them are really good. Some of them are pretty standard. But I think you get this feeling very quickly in the film that this crew on the Lewis Clark are like a family, and you really sort of care about them. You get the fact that they care about each other.
Right. They refer to each other as, Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Baby Bear.
Yeah, exactly. And you get that, it doesn't have to take a long time to explain that. You know that they've worked together for a very long time. They all know each other in and out. They've got Kathleen Quinlan's character has got this child at home, a disabled child that she's had to leave to go on this mission, and then that's what the ship shows her is her child with sort of maggots on his legs and in a state of despair on the ship. And I think I had to say that Kathleen Quinlan is probably one of the standout performances in this film, because she does look genuinely terrified in this film.
Right. And at the same time, no, I think you're right. I think she does an excellent job. I think you really get the feeling that this is a woman who knows her job. She's the medical technician and knows what she's doing. She's very professional about it, but not cold. And she goes from being this very professional, straightforward, fact-focused person to being just terrified of being on the ship, of being in the medical bay, of what she's been seeing. So she does a good job. I think Elmo, I agree with you that most people do a really good job. I think maybe some needed context got trimmed out for time and pacing for Dr. Weir.
Yes. For me, when I first saw this film, and most of my experience of Sam Neill was Jurassic Park, The Piano, things where he's reasonably sort of straight-laced, and you think, well, this is a bit of he's playing against type in this film because he's just batshit crazy. In later years, since seeing films like In the Mouth of Madness and Possession, he's well versed at playing absolutely loony characters.
What happened to your eyes?
Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see.
What are you talking about?
I created the Event Horizon to reach the stars. But she's gone much, much farther than that.
Yes. I actually just watched In the Mouth of Madness for the first time last night, by coincidence.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I thought he was great in that, in being a kind of a twat, but,
Yeah. But once he goes full on sort of poking his own eyes out and throwing out the one-liners really in this film, he's a lot of fun, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
Once he gets to that stage. And genuinely creepy as well, I think.
Yes.
I think anything with eyes missing has always bothered me.
Right.
I mean, I was about 14 when I saw this
Oh,
film.
goodness.
And there were a lot of scenes in this film that really, really got to me. Sort of earlier in the picture, there's the character of Justin, who's the sort of baby bear
Right.
of the crew that everybody sort of looks after. and he's the first one to sort of get affected as he goes through this gloopy sort of black hole and comes back.
Touches the thing he shouldn't have touched.
Exactly.
Justin, open the door.
Did you hear it?
Keep him talking. Yes. Yes, I heard it. Do you know what it is?
It shows you things. Horrible things.
What does?
The dark inside me from the other place. I won't go back there. I won't.
No, baby bear. Come on, open the door.
And he's so he's sort of catatonic for a chunk of the film, and then sort of livens up, makes his way to an airlock and sets it to open and goes through this stage of decompression. Now, I don't know how accurate that is to real deep space decompression, but for me as a 14-year-old, it scared the bejesus out of me. And just, I could not... That was probably the scene that most affected me when I first watched it, because you get this really cool practical effect where his arm, his veins start to pop out of his arms and then out of his face, and then a little bit of a clunky effect scene with Lawrence Fishburne's character catching him in midair, but then blood just flowing out of eyes and all over space. It still gets to me a little bit.
Yeah.
But
after hearing descriptions of it, between viewings, I had pictured it being something that took a lot longer, but in the film, the captain actually gets almost close enough to the airlock to keep him from going out, but definitely close enough to keep him from being out of the ship for less than a minute. And gets him back inside and repressurized. But I think at least some of the science is accurate. They're telling him to blow all the air out of his lungs.
Yes.
And curl up in a ball, and just to preserve heat and, keep body integrity as much as possible. And of course, Justin's panicking. He can't remember to do any of that. But he's right there, and he brings him right back in, and Justin, gets to survive, which is nice.
Yes.
Because you like him. He's sweet.
Yeah. And I think, not that any of them are particularly unlikable, but you do get quite a few survive at the end of this film. You've got Richard T. Jones's character, which sort of brings this welcome little bit of relief.
Yeah, he's the comic relief for the film.
To the story. I mean, even when everything is, the shit's completely hitting the fan at the end, towards the end of the film, you've got this sort of moment where he's blown into deep space and manages to hurl himself back towards the event horizon and literally can't stop himself, and effectively saves the day near enough. But, he's got a few good little one-liners here and there through the film as well.
Yes.
Well, fuck layman's terms. Do you speak English?
So Sean Pertwee, he provides a sort of voice of reason, really. He's the one who's like, I'm not staying on this ship any longer than I need to. We need to just get the fuck out of here as quickly as possible. And he's pretty solid in anything that he's in. Jolie Richardson is probably the most out of place character or actor in this film. I don't think she comes across very comfortable in this film, and sort of looking at the documentary, I think she struggled a little bit to get into character.
Maybe I thought she did all right. She's
not bad, but I think
she's not given a lot character wise.
No.
She doesn't get a lot of character beats. She just has things to do, but not really expression of like who she is while she does them. She and Cooper, I don't think you get to see what their sins are. I don't think they get haunted by the ship.
No.
So that sort of takes out a little potential character development there by not having that.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of, from watching the making of documentary, they all were tasked with coming up with their own backstories and creating their own, their own sort of visions of that the ship would have shown them. Jason Isaac, he talks quite extensively because he's one of the only cast members that's on that documentary. But a bit like Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo on Super Mario Brothers, They all really got on really well during the making of this film, and they're all. Paul Anderson talks about how they all had a good time despite some of the scenes that we're filming,
Right.
and I think that probably helps to the whole sort of ensemble really, and this sort of family feeling that you get, that they're all a sort of lived in crew, and they've known each other for years and done many missions together. And I think Lawrence Fishburne's pretty solid in this film as
Yes.
well. He's always believable as a leader.
Yes,
in
definitely. He's
in
always got
anything
brings the gravitas.
You can't just leave her.
I have no intention of leaving her, Doctor. I will take the Lewis and Clark to a safe distance, and then I will launch TAC missiles at the event horizon until I'm satisfied she's vaporized. Fuck this ship.
Yes, and he's believable in his guilt as well. Obviously, he has this guilt about having to leave somebody behind, even though he didn't really have a choice. But he portrays it pretty well that he still has a lot of guilt about that, and you get again a slightly dodgy effect, I suppose, with the Burning Man. It's not quite as clean as
It's
it could
tough
be.
to do though. It's hard to do firework, especially if the character is not clothed. It's very difficult to do. Typically they'll coat you in fire retardant gel and then put the fire suit on you and light it. But if you don't have clothes on, you can't camouflage a fire suit very well. So you have to do the effect some other way.
And but there's some really good, gore effects and practical effects.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I mentioned the veins on the arms and things like that, and the practical effects were done by Bob Keane, who did Hellraiser, the original Hellraiser.
That explains
which-
a lot.
Yes, and I always think Hellraiser's one of them films that gets. I don't think it quite gets the love for its practical effects as it should do. People talk about horror practical effects, and they immediately go to Rick Baker and American Werewolf in London and Rob Bottin in The Thing. But if you look at Hellraiser, aside from the Pinhead sort of costume and stuff like that, some of the earlier bits, like the reformation of Frank
Right.
coming out of the floorboards, that is such an underrated effect, I think, because nobody talks about it necessarily. They talk about Skinned Alive and all that sort of thing, but if you go back and look at that, it's a really strong practical effect, and there's a few of those in here. The death of DJ, where he's sort of strung up in midair with all his chest open, that was apparently a big set piece that got cut, with the whole guts hanging out and him still being alive,
Right.
and them just sort of slowly falling out of him, onto the table, and he's still sort of writhing around, which is a shame, because I would like to see that, the sick individual that I am.
Yeah, that was, I think, before the days of unrated director's cuts were common.
Yes. Yeah.
Before they were common on DVDs, and they were, they had to cut a lot to get an R rating, or in the United States, get an R rating. And I'm not sure, is it an 18 rating over in
It
the
was
UK?
18 over here, yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
it would have been cool to see the guts hanging out on the table.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, I'll get to some of the other bits now that this sort of dimension of pure chaos, as they call it in the film, or they call it hell. There was apparently more sort of explanation that the ship would have has actually been to hell. It's left a little bit more ambiguous in the final cut of the film, but I think it's just got such a great build to it. You got this recording on the ship when they're finding out what the mission is.
Now, we've been unable to verify live contact. The TDRS did receive this single transmission.
The fucking hell is that?
Got this sort of distorted noise, that's just really unnerving to begin with.
Yeah.
It goes
You make out there's a lot of screaming on the recording.
Yes. Yeah, oh, yes, definitely. And then these sort of snippets of Latin that DJ deciphers from that audio, and then they find the ship's log. It's almost like stages. You've got the sounds, you've got this blurred vision, and then they finally filter out everything and see exactly what happened to the original crew of the Event Horizon, which is this sort of orgiastic, sadomasochistic bloodbath that you're not quite sure what's going on. It shows you enough to know that there's some really weird shit going on.
Right. I mean, this footage is notorious. Apparently, I heard there was a lot more of it that had to be cut, and they haven't been able to find it anywhere.
Yes. Well, there's this piece, and then towards the end of the film, when Dr. Weir shows Miller what's going to happen to his crew, basically, and you get these again sort of snippets of hell, where they're all sort of mashed up and skewered on spikes and barbed wire wrapped around their faces and things like that. That was all, there was extended pieces of that as well. I would recommend anybody who likes those kind of practical effects and gore and things like that, if you go onto YouTube, there are videos of that sort of slowed down, so you can see everything. Which is fascinating to see afterwards, but it's enough to see when you first watch the film. It's enough to throw
I think
you.
your imagination fills in any gaps.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there was, I think, 30 extra minutes basically to the original cut of the film, and a few of those were sort of scene-setting pieces early on in the film, but there was a lot that they cut out towards the end when you start getting these visions of hell. So if you think, even another 5 minutes of those sort of things is probably going to be pretty intense. All that footage was or the extra scenes or the extra footage, anything that was left on the cutting room floor was stored in an assault mine in Bulgaria or something like that, somewhere really random, and it just fizzled away basically. But one of the producers apparently found a VHS in 2017, and they're apparently working to see if there's anything recoverable from that. There are one or two on the documentary on the DVD, which again is available on YouTube. There are one or two pieces of missing footage on there, which is this sort of spider walk scene.
Yes, I saw that. I have a collector's edition of the movie on DVD, and I saw that. Yeah,
I think that's that's the actual documentary that's on YouTube. And then there's an earlier scene right towards the start of the film with Weir getting the news that the Event Horizons just appeared again.
Could have used that. Could have used that prep scene of the Event Horizon and how important it is to him, and why it's so important to him before he gets on the Lewis and Clark. Yeah,
because I think you just sort of get this, his wife killed himself because he was too busy doing what he was doing with the Event Horizon. That's it, really. That's all you sort of get for Weir.
Right.
And I think he's not really given a full arc. He's just sort of, he's obsessed with this ship. And he's going to stay with it no matter what, even if that means he's got to walk around naked and score weird symbols into his own skin, which again is an amazing little piece of makeup.
Right. Yeah, that took hours, I heard, where you just had to...
8 hours. 8 hours.
I cannot imagine. I mean,
but apparently
I need to run to the toilet every 45 minutes just on a normal day. I can't imagine being in a latex bodysuit for 8 hours and not being able to, do anything in it. You'd have to dehydrate yourself, Yeah,
you'd have to have something worked into it, surely.
I would hope so.
Who knows? Well, all of was it Christian Bale? Somebody, I think Ben Affleck, asked him what advice he got for playing Batman, and the first thing he said was make sure they put a zipper in or something like that.
Yeah, I believe that.
But yeah, you've got these, despite how graphic and disturbing these images are, they're almost quite beautiful.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, in a sort of Hieronymus Bosch sort of way.
Yes, which was the influence. But I think you can appreciate the vision and what people must have gone through to make those scenes.
Yeah.
'Cause I can't imagine they'd be particularly nice to film, even if they are
No,
not real.
yeah, days and weeks to manufacture the pieces for it to set up. I mean, there's the one glimpse we get that really sticks with me is the one where there's a man with something stuck in his mouth, and you don't know if it's an arm or a tentacle or
and it just keeps going.
What it is, yeah, and it just keeps going, and it's unnerving.
Yeah, I like there's one, I think it's the captain, because he's speaking Latin and he's got his own eyes in his hands, just showing them to the camera. There's somebody getting a tooth knocked out through the back of the head.
Right.
Going forward again, it's a very quick shot in the final film, but there is there's a little bit of a longer version, I think, on the DVD extras for that one. But yeah, it just fascinated me the same way that Hellraiser does. I think there's a lot of influence from Hellraiser, not just from Bob Keane, who did the effects, but it must have been there for Paul Anderson as well. But that leads to one of my favourite lines in this film, and there's a lot of lines mainly from Sam Neill, but you get this the first time they see this video from the old Event Horizon crew. They're watching it, and then it just cuts to Miller, who says,
We're leaving.
Yep. Yep. I love it. No nonsense. Gonna protect his crew at all costs. We're not even coming close to tangling with that. Let's go.
But to me, I think it's they do a good job in making this ship this almost sort of living, breathing entity that is just completely fucking with the crew from the moment that they step on board, and it's sort of taken them there, taking them to the edge of this sort of reality and pushing them through, whether through killing themselves or you get this feeling from the visions at the end. You've got when he's showing these snippets of what's going to happen to the crew, you've got some of the crew members in there that have died, so it's almost suggesting that it's pushing them beyond this world, beyond death, and it's going to keep doing these sick things to them, the other end of the universe, or wherever the hell the ship's been.
Cthulhu's home dimension or something.
But and I think there was a lot of films that I considered, but apart from this being one of my favourite films, I just really it really sort of fit that bill of being between realities, I suppose. It's going from this plane to another one, whether it's this dimension of pure chaos or whatever, and it's taking this crew. It's not there because it's not taking them there because it needs to feed on them or anything like that. The original plan was that there would be actual aliens that are doing this in the end, and they'd be sort of tentacled, sort of Lovecraftian type species that gets inside their heads, which I think would have been a massive shame if they'd have gone that way, because it would have taken away from it. It's pretty ambiguous. So you don't know absolutely everything about this other than it's extremely fucked up.
No, I think it works incredibly well as a sort of a cosmic horror piece, because you don't know if they've gone to Cthulhu dimension or literal hell somehow, that somehow the ship punched a hole through reality in such a way that they went through literal hell to come back out the other side. And were they there for 7 whole years, or did it seem like a blink of an eye to them, or did it seem like eternity to them, the people who were on the ship, and their bodies are gone? Where are they?
That's it. You only get one. You get the the popsicle kind of guy
Right.
that just drops out of midair and smashes
Oh,
all over the place.
and what a nice effect that is, too.
Yes, there's actually the special effects guy, I think Bob Keane mentions, if you do look very carefully, somebody put a little dolly inside the
Frozen Man.
effect, so when it drops down, there's a little that bounces around.
I think no one notices it because there's a hand sort of front and almost center that your eye immediately goes to.
But yeah, that's all I've really got on Event Horizon, other than throwing out a load of Sam Neill quotes from it, which...
Hell is only a word. The reality is much, much worse.
So we'll take a short break and then we'll move on to your film. Okay, welcome to the intermission. This is part of the episode where I ask my co-host a random question, a question that they've not prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So, are you ready, Nicole?
As ready as I will ever be.
It's reasonably straightforward, this one. What is your favourite movie tagline?
Oh, goodness. I had one, and now it's flown out of my head. Oh, gosh, my favorite movie tagline. I mean, it's hard to beat In Space, No One Can Hear You Scream.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one to beat, the classic from Alien. So, I think I have to go with that. But, I mean, there have been some brilliant ones, but honestly, most often they are either terrible, or they're confusing, or they're too long. And it's just, I don't know. It's a strange business to be in, the movie tagline business. I wonder how one gets a job doing that. Is it the people who work on the posters? Are you just given one to put on the poster somewhere? Or who's responsible for that? Inquiring minds want to know.
Well, it would be, I suppose it's the marketing department, isn't it? It's all done through them. I've got a few favourites, but I think just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water.
Right, that's Jaws 2, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Is one of my favourites, but just on sheer cleverness and the fact that it's pretty hilarious is the tagline for Zombievers. which is? You'll be damned.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yes. Or I can't remember what it's called, but the latest Shaft film that had Samuel L. Jackson, Richard Roundtree, and somebody else. I'm not sure if it was Michael B. Jordan who played the latest.
No, I can't remember his name, though. But yes, a younger actor.
The tagline for that was more shaft than you can handle. So there are some good ones. But there we go.
At least it's better than the audio tagline they had in the trailer for the Samuel L. Jackson Shaft film, where he said, "It's my duty to please that booty."
Oh dear.
Yes.
Well, on that note, I think we shall go back to the main episode. Thank you very much. Okay, so that leads us on to your choice then, Nicole. What film did you pick?
I chose 2001's Pulse, known in Japan as Chiral or Circuit.
意識、霊魂、何と呼んでもいいんだけど、それを受容できるエリアっていうのは残念ながら無限大ではなかった。インターネットって勝手に向こうから繋がっちゃうもんなの？でもいつか必ずいっぱいになる。そしたら魂は別のエリア。 つまりこっちの世界へ進出してくるしか方法がない。
どうしてみんないなくなるんだろう。
つまり回路が開かれた。
それ貸して。
As directed by, and I'm going to use the Japanese traditional usage and put the family name first and the personal name second. So it's the director is Kurosawa Kiyoshi. He's also the writer. Cast rundown. I'm going to do my best here.
I'm sure you'll be a million times better than me because I
try to be respectful, but I may put the emphasis on the wrong syllable here and there. So it's Kato Haruhiko as Kawashima Ryosuke, Aso Kumiko as Kudomichi, Koyuki as Karasawa Harue, Arisaka Kurume as Sasano Junko, Matsuo Masatoshi as Yabe Toshio, Takeda Shinji as Yoshizaki.
You're just showing off now, aren't you?
I've had a lot of practice. I watch a lot of East Asian cinema.
Yes, well, I wouldn't say I watch a lot, but I like a lot, if that makes sense. The ones, especially Asian horror.
They know how to do it. So the synopsis: 2 groups of people discover evidence that suggests ghosts may be trying to invade the human world. One by one, their friends disappear as they try to find the truth and stop the phenomenon. I thought this was fairly easy for me. After The Shining, I thought of 3 others immediately. Session 9, Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, and Pulse. Session 9 is underseen, but it's a little uneven. I'm not sure I would call it a horror classic. Stalker is a classic, and it's a gorgeous film, but I have watched it twice, and I've fallen asleep at the exact same point both times. So I went with Pulse, in which people visit forbidden rooms, and by the end, all of Tokyo has become one big liminal space. And because of the themes of the movie and certain events that happen, it pretty much meets every definition of liminal, both literal and figurative. Before I start with a discussion of the film and what's liminal about it, I would like to give a content warning for this movie. Pulse is a film about ghosts, existential loneliness, despair, and disconnection, and it features multiple deaths by suicide. It is very effective at conveying an eerie, sad atmosphere with a city of people who, one by one, just lose the will to live. And I honestly don't advise watching it if you're currently in a depressive episode yourself, or you're dealing with the loss of someone who has died by suicide. Before I watch it, I have to figure out if I've got the emotional resilience for it. Because the first time I watched this, I was in a really down mood for days afterward. It hit me very hard. So I think I just felt like a content warning is in order on this, because, your mileage may vary. Other people may watch this and it doesn't affect them much at all, and that's fine, but everyone reacts differently, and I just wanted to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I mean, I found when I watched it, it didn't affect me too much. It was more when the sort of next day, when I started to sort of make sort of sense of the notes that I'd made while watching it, and it almost affected me at that stage. It was, just sort of thinking about, like you say, these issues of loneliness and just people being alone, even some of the people that are in these sort of tight-knit groups as well.
Right.
And anybody who has been through any kind of depression, really, where you just feel completely alone, even if you're surrounded by family and friends. And and I really sort of took that out of the film, but not necessarily when I was watching it. It was more when I thought about it in retrospect. And I've had that with, not necessarily in terms of depression, but a lot of Jordan Peele's films I thought sort of stayed with me and affected me more after
Yes.
I'd thought about them rather than while I was watching them.
Right.
And
I
definitely had that with this film.
Yeah, I got a lot more out of Nope over the days after it than while I was watching it, I think. So,
Yeah.
That being said, the movie begins on a ship. Ship is itself a liminal space, going between point A and point B on a big open gray ocean. A woman's looking over the horizon. The ship captain comes to talk to her, and we don't see, other than a few on the bridge, you don't see anyone else on this ship that would require a good-sized crew and could hold a lot of passengers. And, we'll find out later, near the end of the movie, that they're basically in a no man's land. They're heading for a place that they hope is a viable destination, but they can't be sure. So this is sort of a limbo for everyone.
But I even found that sort of early on in the film. I thought there was parts of it where this sort of first, I forget the character's name, but the first guy that we see is affected by this sort of phenomenon, and
Taguchi,
one of the girls, and I think it's Michi, goes to and finds him, and she's there's a few scenes of her going across this sort of cityscape, and there's just nobody there.
Right.
There's nobody, and then you get a sort of scene with. There's a few scenes, I think, is it a college or something like that, and they're in a restaurant, sort of in the early part of the film. But then there's still just not a lot of people about.
Right, and this is Tokyo. This is one of the most densely populated cities on the planet, and there's surprisingly few people that you see for that kind of density.
But then that's when that's one of the things that got me thinking after watching it, and ruminating and thinking, well. Was that done on purpose? Is that because this thing is already starting to affect the people of Tokyo?
Right. I think you could say that. I think you could also, you could probably chalk it up to budget somewhat. I don't know how much money the director had to play with when making this film. But yes, it's already starting with a sort of seemingly reduced population, Tokyo.
Very, very bleak.
Yes, and it's shot it almost looks like it's shot on videotape. There's sort of a softness to it. It's not very sharply defined. It looks almost like a copy of a film.
Yes. I mean, I sent you a picture of me starting to watch it on my projector, and it was, a 1080, and I was wondering if I'd got the right sort of definition to it, and
right.
Obviously that's how it is, but it adds to that era.
Right, it's very deliberate that way. Yeah, it also helps with cover the ghost effects very well, I think. Yes,
yeah, I think that, but then the whole sort of general eeriness of early webcams as well. It really helps.
Right.
Helps with that.
Yeah, early webcams were pretty low resolution. It didn't capture movement terribly well, so movement tended to be pretty jittery. Yeah, cameras were not great back then, especially ones that there weren't a lot that were built in. Usually you had to buy an external camera to plunk somewhere.
Yes. Well, it was one of the really, well, not necessarily disturbing things, but it was just really threw me early on is when Kawashima has to actually do some work to get connected to the internet. He's like, internet, what's this thing? And he's having to put a boot up disk in. And,
right. So you want to have the internet? Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
始めましょう。インターネット。あ、違う、こっちか。こっちだ。
Exactly, and it brought back a lot of memories of dial-up tone for getting onto the internet.
Oh yes, well. Yes.
And the ever childish me, his internet service provider was called Uranus.
Yes.
made me smile.
But it's also, the mythological god of the heavens. You can...
Yeah, that's not what I thought.
You know how bashful I am. I can't even say the word titmouse without giggling like a schoolgirl.
I understand. But actually, I wonder if there's a bit of a translation thing that we're missing, because he's already, or if it's just a mistake, but his computer already has Internet Explorer installed on it. When he installs the I'm going to say Uranus program, which I think might be, it might be like a chat program. Like it's designed to be almost a chat roulette kind of thing, where so that he can meet other people.
Yes, an old version of, is it Omegle? Is that this thing I've seen? I've never been on it, but there's this website where you can go on and just
talk to a random person.
Yeah.
I think so.
Which I know somebody who has been on it, and they said it's just a bit weird.
I would imagine.
Which I can imagine. Yeah.
I would imagine. Yeah.
He said the first thing you get asked is, are you male or female? So that sort of tells you what kind of people are.
Right. Right. So there's basically two storylines in this film that converge in like the last 20, 25 minutes. So you've got Michi's storyline. Michi's the greenhouse worker who first goes to Taguchi's place and something terrible happens, and there's Kawashima, who is signing onto the internet for the first time for him, and it's weird things start to happen to him. So this is sort of half about the internet itself, and the internet is a liminal space in its own way. It was relatively young when the film was released. Programs to access it were being given away for free in hopes of getting your subscription fees for their services. So it's not surprising that Kawashima has a random disk from the Uranus ISP. But yeah, the internet itself is sort of a non-place where people can gather, but it also facilitates people being physically separate while they're using it. In Michi's story, we meet her mom at one point, and then at the greenhouse only has 5 employees, and one of them's gone within the first 10 minutes of the movie. One of the creepy things is that our first view of Taguchi's apartment seems to be through a glitchy video monitor, but there's no camera in that place. When we go to the apartment later, there's no camera pointing in that direction. So maybe it's a ghost's eye view.
And that whole set is pretty creepy from the get-go as well. I mean, a plastic sheet is just a godsend to anybody making a horror film. I think.
Yeah, he's got that translucent like shower curtain, I think, dividing the rooms, and it makes for a very creepy entrance for Taguchi. But on her way there, Michi takes a bus, and she's the only person on the bus. We don't even see the driver. She's on this bus with these deep red seats, and she's the only one. When she gets to his apartment building, she has to go up these outdoor staircases to get to his top floor apartment, and there are multiple staircases, and there is no one visible.
No.
These stairways are completely empty. She's able to find Taguchi's spare key under his plant pot. Don't hide your key under a plant pot, people. Everybody knows to look there. Don't do that. Don't get the fake rock. Do something different. She goes up to Taguchi's apartment and doesn't see him. His apartment is gloomy, and it's got the weird shower curtain making separate spaces where there ordinarily wouldn't be any. His apartment is messy. It's full of dark corners. While she's there sorting through things, you see a view over her shoulder to the area beyond the curtain. And very slowly, you realize there's a seated figure, and he slowly stands up. And eventually Michi looks over there and goes to investigate. She says, oh, there it is. And it's Taguchi, and he's seems fine. he seems all right, and she's chatting with him.
なんだ、いたんだ。みち、何？ずっと連絡くんないから心配してたんだよ。そっか、ごめん。
In front of a patio door that has a star pattern right about where somebody's head might be, which I thought was very interesting. You don't see any injuries on Taguchi's forehead. I wondered if maybe he had, in frustration or something, had hit his head against the patio door, but maybe it's the sign of a ghost trying to get in. She talks to him briefly, and he seems okay. And while he's talking with her, he picks up this sort of length of cable, and he says, go over there. The disc is on the desk. Go help yourself. And goes back, and he has hanged himself in the minute that she's been sorting through the stuff on his desk. And she's horrified, and as she approaches to look at him, suddenly it's not a body hanging there anymore. It's this dark shadow on the wall. This is part of I think a Japanese cultural thing, along with their concept of ghosts and what ghosts are like. This looks like there's an infamous place that's in a museum now that is a blast shadow from Hiroshima, where somebody was sitting, and there's a perfect shadow of them on the spot where they were seated. And this is what happens every time someone disappears. They leave this shadow behind on the wall, which is it's an extra layer of sort of cultural sadness on top of it, I think, and eeriness.
Yeah. But it works every time as well throughout the film, because it happens, I think, 3 or 4
Absolutely,
times.
yes.
And each time it is just, it's as creepy as that first time. You would expect yourself to expect it later on in the film, but then it just hits you with it again.
And every time it's effective. So, Michi's coworkers pick her up at the police station. There are a few people at the station, but not as many as you might expect for a police station that size. They go to the cafe, and the cafe is one of the few places in the film that's got a fair amount of people in it.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's because, the 2 times we see a good number of people in one place, it's young people. It's like people in their early 20s kind of crowd. And I wonder if it's because they're seen as, I don't know, more robust, more full of life, more full of optimism than most people. And that's why there's so many of them, at least at first.
The only other time I could think that there was a lot of people is when, and I got a little bit lost at this point. I assumed it was somebody random and not somebody who we'd seen in the story, but where somebody jumps off the top of the factory. And I think it's Michi who witnesses it.
Yes. And some people come together.
There's quite a few. Then they just sort of come out. This sort of, whether it's just morbid curiosity or whatever, but you get quite a few. That just sort of hit me because it was, like I said, in the early parts of the film, apart from that cafe scene, you'd not seen a lot of people, and it was just quite sort of poignant that you then see a lot of people just appearing just to see what's going on, and this person who's jumped off the top of the factory. Right.
And you see more students later in the computer classroom the first time that Kawashima looks for help. So Michi's coworkers pick her up, and they go to the cafe, and Yabe, who is one of her coworkers at the greenhouse, he says maybe he suddenly just wanted to die. I get that way sometimes. It's so easy to hang yourself. And just sort of this casual dropping of this, what would ordinarily be a conversational bomb, I would say, not to call back. That's sort of inadvertent, but
anybody,
yeah, anybody would
your close circle, you would be like,
are you okay? Is everything all right? So then we switch over to Kawashima, and he installs the internet browser / chat room program, I think one of the funnier parts, especially looking back on it, is how he's skimming over the user agreement, and he's just, yeah, agree.
Yeah.
And then on his monitor...
Very realistic.
Yes, it is very realistic. On his monitor, it starts cycling through views of different rooms in which there's one person who is behaving strangely. And while in theory he's connected to each of them, he doesn't seem to be able to communicate with them, and he can only just watch them. And it freaks him out. You know, video quality was a lot lower at the time, which adds an uncanny feeling to what he's seeing. You know, that jerkiness I was talking about, and everybody's kind of fuzzy. And then text appears on the screen that says, "Would you like to meet a ghost?" And he's like, nope's out of that, turns it off, turns everything off. He's like, and he's just like, like an expression on his face, like, God damn it, it's broken. You know, this isn't what I wanted at all. This isn't what I was expecting.
It's not really sort of explained, is it, that? Because that's the only time it happens in the film is you get this communication from one of these feeds.
Yes.
And then it doesn't come up again, which I found a little bit strange. But the Kawashima character, I thought, was...
I love him.
My favourite. He's so likeable. He's just really... I mean, he's probably the most sensible person in this film, because he just doesn't... He's like, no, shuts it all down and wants to just be rid of it, even when it comes back on and he's in bed asleep and it comes back on. He's like, no.
Yep.
And
turns it off again.
Puts it to one side, and that's it. It's done.
Right.
Until obviously he meets a girl, and
yes, yeah. When he goes to find out what's going on, you know, this thing turns itself on in the middle of the night, and there's a man with a bag on his head, and the words "Help me" all over the wall behind him. It took a few viewings, but I finally put together this last time that Kawashima is lonely. He's installing this to try to meet people and talk to people. Mm-hmm. He dresses differently from all the other students. You know, he's prone to wearing bright T-shirts with English words on them, or Hawaiian shirts. His hair is different from everybody else's. His whole style is different, and he's awkward talking to new people, as we see when he goes to the computer classroom the next day.
He wouldn't be out of place in America 2001.
No, not at all. Not at all. Oh, and he goes to the arcade by himself. You know,
yes.
His apartment is a mess because nobody ever comes over. So why bother keeping it clean? Or it could just be because he's, 20-year-old male. But
well, it happens when you're a 40-year-old man.
It can, yeah. So he goes to the computer classroom.
Except when you're a 40-year-old male, you can blame it on the kids.
Yes, that's true. If you have kids, you can blame it on the kids.
Well, yes.
So, which is if you don't have kids, get dogs, because then you can blame it on the dogs.
Yeah. If you don't blame it on the kids if you haven't got kids, because then that's really going to...
That's going to raise a lot of questions.
Get you into a bit of trouble, quite possibly.
So, yeah, the computer classroom, I guess it's supposed to be between classes, because it's full of computers, but there's only a few students in there. And Kawashima just sort of sidles up to this random guy and looks over his shoulder for a minute, and he's just like, "Say, have you ever heard of a computer dialing up the internet by itself?" And Haruwe is the, I don't know what you would call it, the proctor of the classroom, or maybe a teaching assistant at the university. She tells Kawashima to either bookmark the site or print screen if it happens again. When the bell rings, this is when the very few times you see a bunch of people, students start coming in and filling up the classroom. Yeah. We switch back to Michi's story, and we see Yabe at the greenhouse receives a call for help, and receives on his phone, again in bad grainy 2001 flip phone quality, a photo of Taguchi's place. And so he goes there, and again he's on the bus, and the bus is empty, and it's the same deep red seats. He even sits in the same seat that Michi does. And so maybe it's like he's traveling through a limbo to this dangerous, spirit-dense place. And he goes there, and he sees Taguchi's ghost And he also finds a printout marked the Forbidden Room.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's leaving, he goes down to the ground floor, and he turns to look as he's going, and he sees an open sort of foyer, and there's a door inside that has red tape around it, and it's visible from the street. So he gets curious. Bad idea. Peels the tape off. Bad idea number 2. Goes down into a poorly lit basement area. Bad idea number 3 here. And 3 strikes and you're out. And he's in there, and there's this area of very deep shadow in this sort of basement area. And slowly, with no visible light source, it sort of brightens up. There's red paint sort of slapped on the wall, and I couldn't make out if it was saying anything, or, there were some strokes visible on the edges of it, but it's kind of a mess. And he turns around and he sees a figure. This female figure in a skirt that starts moving toward him. And I would say in slow motion, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a person moving very slowly. I think they got a dancer.
It's almost like this interpretive sort of dance
thing
that they do. That's very, very otherworldly. And
it's almost like she forgets how to walk at one point and loses her balance a bit. And so he, being the sensible guy, jumps behind a couch that's at the end of this hallway and looks under the couch, and the camera moves so you can see under the couch and you can't see feet. So he's like, oh, okay, good, she's gone, and turns, and she's peering over the back of the couch at him, and he screams, and we cut away, and we don't see what happens there. And the interesting thing I thought is that it's basically looks all right. The ghost is shadowy, but like in the U.S., a lot of times they have this tradition of the ghost looks like it did when the person died. So they'll have wounds sometimes, or they'll be wearing the clothes they were wearing when they died, and they look very pale and they look a mess. But this woman just is kind of looks like an ordinary woman who's been grayed out a little bit. Yeah,
very sort of undefined and and just really eerie.
It is. Eerie is exactly the right word, I think, to describe it.
But it's almost akin to that eeriness that you get from the 2001 webcams, I think, and that sort of, I suppose that's a reasonably sort of conscious effort on behalf of the filmmakers, is that movement is very similar to the capabilities of a webcam in 2001.
Yeah, I think so. I think 2 days pass before Yabe returns to work. It's a little hard to tell. When time passes in this movie, it doesn't do what a lot of films do, which is sort of change what sort of camera you're using. Like switch to a Steadicam, or switch to like a traveling shot, or lighting change significantly. It doesn't do any of that. The only way you can tell that time is passing is that people are wearing different clothes in the next scene. So I think it's 2 days before Yabe goes back to work, and he's very distant and weird. We see Kawashima go to an arcade by himself, and there's some people in the arcade, not a ton. And he walks home after, and the computer dials up the help me room again. And he tries to do the advice that Hathaway gave him. He tries the bookmark and he tries the print screen, but neither of them work. So he just unplugs everything at this point. It's not just turning it off. He's unplugging the monitor so that it can't come on again.
He's making sense. He's making sensible choices.
Yes, he absolutely is. He's following up. Which is what you should do. Follow up. So he goes to the computer research lab to talk to Haraway, and this is different from the classroom. This is like a bigger space. The computers are a little more sparsely spaced. There's clearly sort of research work going on. He finds Haraway, and while he's talking to her and explaining things, he sees this screen that just has these white dots on a black background floating around very slowly, and they come together and they move apart again.
これ何？
それうちの研究室で作ったやつ。2つの点があんまり接近しすぎると死んじゃうし、あんまり離れすぎると近づこうとするようにプログラムされてるわけ。
He asks what it is, and Haraway says, "This is something we programmed here. If two dots get too close, they die. But if they get too far apart, they're pulled closer together." And I wouldn't suggest staring at it for too long. She doesn't explain why. It's one of those things. It's a screensaver almost sort of thing where you could just watch it for ages and nothing big will happen, but it's, it can be hypnotic to watch. And so they go back to Kawashima's place. She asks to come over, and he's like you can't believe his luck that this girl wants to come over to his place. It's like, yeah, of course you can, but not in a creepy way,
No, not at all. No.
He's not excited in a creepy way. He's just like, whoa, what, really? Seriously? And she goes to his place and asks, while she's downloading the data from his computer, she asks why he got on the internet in the first place, since he doesn't seem to like computers, and just, to connect with other people. And he's like, I don't really know why. Maybe. I don't know. Which is, I think, just covering it up. Sadly.
Yeah. I love him.
I do. I love him so much. He's so pure.
Yeah.
And he just seems good-hearted, Back at the greenhouse. At this point, we're sort of ping-ponging back and forth between the storylines. It's
Yeah, I must admit, I did. There was a section in the middle of the film where I was getting a little bit lost.
Right.
But I do find that sometimes with not just Asian films, but anything with subtitles is sometimes. I think your attention obviously is to the subtitles and the film as well. So I think you can just miss snippets sometimes that sort of take you out of it. I think you'll sometimes get more out of a foreign language film when you watch it a second time, and you're maybe not quite so dialed into the subtitles.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I definitely get more out of this every time I watch it. I also did some research afterwards to try to fill in things. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit deaf anyway, so I'm used to having subtitles on all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that was the main reason I was sort of struggling a little bit at this point to keep up. Because the flip-flopping in the middle of the film gets
a little choppier.
Yeah.
Back at the greenhouse, Michi wants to check on Yabe, the man who saw the ghost and now is all distant. But the boss thinks it might be a waste of time, saying that friends always end up hurting each other. And if so, who needs friends like these? And he says something like, living without friends may be a courageous choice in itself.
This was very, very weird, this scene, I thought. It was just didn't seem to fit in the film.
Yeah, it was strange. It was strange. I think it's what he's doing. I think he's the person we see later who has made the first Forbidden Room, the one that gets destroyed.
Right.
I think he's the one who asked for the tape from the construction worker to make a Forbidden Room.
Okay.
But in any case, I think it's a defense mechanism saying, well, who needs friends anyway? This is a person who probably doesn't make friends very easily, if at all. Michi does go looking for Yabe, and she finds him, but as she gets closer, he moves further away from her, almost like the two dots in the simulation. Every time she tries to get closer, he pushes back. And just like throughout this movie, despite what would be it's not even, it's even red. It's red tape. It's not a red flag, but it's a sealed room that people seem to be drawn toward, whether or not they it's something that they would ordinarily do. So I think that's part of the director trying to reflect that computer program that's in the film.
I think there is a bit of it's the same with the people coming out to see who's jumped off the top of the factory. It's that morbid curiosity. It's
yes,
don't press this red button. It's and trying to resist pressing the red button.
Mm-hmm.
It's that human nature. Another thing that sort of Kawashima, which he doesn't have, he's got this built-in sort of flight mechanism, I suppose, of his no, not for me kind of thing.
Right. So he goes back. Kawashima goes back to the university library and chats with the programmer of the simulation, Yoshizaki. While they're chatting, there's a ghost that appears.
知りたいんなら捕まえてみるしかないんじゃないのかな。今すぐ走っていけば捕まるかもしれないね。やってみる？やってみなよ。ほら、今すぐ。
Of a young boy, and Yoshizaki's like, no, I see it too. That's sort of the resident ghost of this library. Maybe you should try to catch it. Maybe you should see if you can if you're fast enough, maybe you can catch it. So Kawashima tries to catch it, but it disappears. Later, Yoshizaki's explaining a theory to him that Yoshizaki believes that the world that the spirits inhabit is running out of space. He says whether it's billions or trillions, eventually it will run out of space. So the souls have no choice but to seep into the world of the living. And he thinks that's happening. And he thinks it's happening through electronic devices. It's like ghosts coming to get us through the internet, kind of. Or at least using it as a conduit to break into our world. And they can get anywhere where there are devices to go to, maybe through the phone lines, anywhere you've got to plug in dial-up line. Oh, the world of dial-up.
Well, that's. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that this concept is. They came up with this concept in 2001, and you think when the internet was probably still.
It was just coming into like common usage. Like some workplaces had internet use in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And the very, very early adopters had it before that, but it was a very limited number of networks at that time, and I think around 2000 is where it, and the Matrix, and
it was going into homes,
right?
Homes.
Yeah, so it was becoming much more common for home usage.
Well, I think it's probably still another year or so away from what would become broadband.
Oh yeah,
fiber, I suppose. Still on that dial-up. I mean, I can't remember getting any kind of decent video in 2001 on dial-up.
Right.
That might have just been
the connection.
But then this is
Japan,
I suppose, so as well.
Yeah, and the transmission capacity.
Yeah. But then Japan would be miles ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. So we switch back to Michi, who gets a call from Yabe and goes looking for him, and she finally finds him, and they're both still at work. She finds him in an empty storeroom, but he disappears. He dissipates into a shadow and a smudge. All the other sound in the film cuts out utterly and completely. It goes dead silent, and we hear him whisper, "Help me. Help me." And it is incredibly creepy. The movie is very, very aware of its use of sound. And you have to know how to use silence. I think some directors overuse it. I think some directors underuse it, where they feel like they have to have music in every single second, underscoring every single emotional beat of a film. But this is so effective. All the background noise cuts out, the score cuts out, nothing. And then just the whisper. Yabe's gone missing. And I think in the basement of their own building, Junko finds a forbidden room that's open.
Yeah.
And I think this is the forbidden room that the second forbidden room that the boss made. Junko goes in and is confronted by a ghost. And this one is the traditional, what we think of as the traditional Japanese ghost of a woman with the long hair, and her hair almost has a life of its own. She like lifts it up to look at Junko, and Junko gets cornered, and Michi finds her and tries to pull her out, and Junko resists her at first. You know, and again, I think it's supposed to reflect the dot simulation of someone trying to come together and pulling away, and coming together and pulling away. Yeah. So Michi does eventually get her out after Junko sees the ghost's face and is completely terrified. Michi takes her home, and Junko is now unresponsive. You know, she's barely saying anything. She's not moving. Michi goes out for snacks and goes to a convenience store, and it's empty. You know, there's no one at the counter. There's no other customers in the store. Takes her stuff to the counter and, you know, excuse me. And she finally sees a clerk behind a pane of glass, and it looks like his face starts to melt behind the glass. And of course she freaks out. Although she does keep her head enough to grab all the snacks. Her dashes out of the...
Priority.
Yes. Don't drop the Doritos, for goodness sakes.
No.
And then we cut back to the university library. So again, we're going back, forth. And Kawashima is looking at a book that Haruo had been looking at that was titled Phantoms. And he reads, "Everyone dies, therefore there's no logical reason for ghosts not to exist." Which is flawed logic, to say the least. It's like, why would the fact that everyone dies mean that ghosts exist? That one does not follow on the other. But finds Haruo, and she's unsettled by the disappearances. Everyone's starting to notice. Everything's going south. She asks Kawashima to come to her place so she won't be alone. And of course he's, of course, you know. Again, the girl wants me to be around her. Okay. I'm not going to say no, you know. But also because he's a nice guy. She's scared and he wants to help. And they go to her place, which is, you know, it's not shadowy at all. It's brightly lit. She's got a lot of books. But it seems... to my eye, it seems kind of sterile, you know?
Yeah.
There's no warmth to it. So they go there, and she's worried that she's just like the ghosts. How are they different if, you know, lonely people are just moving through their lives? They don't feel very alive. Then how are we different from the ghosts who are just walking around? Kawashima says, well, we're alive. We're different. And she says, well, then who are they? And she shows him all the monitors that she has at her places and showing the people. And Kawashima, you know, tells her he'd much rather be alive, so much so that he's betting that in his lifetime, medical science will find a way to make people immortal. You'd like that? Do you think that would be fun? To live forever? Yeah. She always wondered what it would be like to be dead since she was a little child. You know, at first she thought that you go over to the place, you know, to heaven or whatever, and you're with everyone having a good time for eternity. And now she wonders if it's just like this, if it's just, you know, feeling alone. And she thinks that the ghosts don't want to kill the living because that would just make more ghosts. She thinks ghosts will make people immortal by trapping them in their loneliness. You know, this is the movie getting bleaker and bleaker and bleaker as it goes along. Back at Michi's apartment, Junko fades away into shadow. Yeah. And even beyond what's happened to everyone else, her shadow disintegrates into ash.
Yeah.
That blows away, despite Michi desperately trying to stop it from happening. And your heart breaks for Michi.
Junko!
Yeah.
So, and then back in Kawashima's life, he goes to the arcade, and you realize there's this wonderful overhead shot of Kawashima. You realize that there is nobody else in this arcade, and he looks up and realizes that it's empty except for this one silhouetted figure that is a ghost. She also moves strangely, sort of wobbles, and he sees that there is a forbidden door that's open with the red tape broken. I don't think he knows what it is yet, but he sees the door open with the tape on it.
But he's still doing pretty well at this point. I mean,
yes.
He's not been... He's he's seen...
Resilient.
He's seen these other monitors, and you're not sure whether they're ghosts on there or not, but he's seen those. He's seen the boy in the library. He's seen this one now, and he's still resilient to
influence.
Influence,
okay.
Yes.
I think some of it is he's just in denial, thinking that medical science will crack immortality in his lifetime, and just be like, oh, well, I get around believing in ghosts by just never thinking about death ever, 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 which I empathize with so much. He meets Haruhi later, and I think at this point she's like breaking stuff on the pavement outside her apartment. She asks Kawashima to take her somewhere, take her far away, take her away from this. And they go to the train station, and the train station is empty. There's nobody there. There are no attendants, so they just jump the turnstile. The train is completely empty, and Kawashima... He tries.
So heartbreaking, this bit.
It is. It's like, where is everybody? And it's, very forlorn. The spaces are becoming more liminal all the time. They are emptying out of people. They are coming closer to the spirit world. The encroachment, the in-between life and death kind of state. And Kawashima reassures her. He says, we are both definitely here. And then the train stops. It's above ground. It's outside. Haruhi feels compelled to return home. Kawashima is like, promise me you'll stay here. I'll go check with the driver, see what's going on. And 1 second after he turns his back, she makes a sprint for the doors. Yeah. And it's so sad because he's like still running, and he looks back and he still runs a few more steps, even realizing that she's gone. We then see Haruhi at home looking at the lone people on her monitors, but she realizes that one of the monitors is showing her from the back, as if there's someone with a camera behind her. That's not something you ever want to see while you're on your computer, on your webcam.
But it doesn't seem to bother her.
No, it doesn't alarm her.
She's already got
just
this...
curious.
Yeah, and I think she's already got this acceptance.
Yes.
I suppose she must have had that. That's why she ran from the train and ran back to the apartment.
Right, or she felt she got too close to Kawashima, so she felt had to move away again. She turns around and she doesn't see anything, and so it keeps cutting back and forth between the monitor, the POV of whoever would be holding that camera. We see her approaching where that person would be standing if there were someone with a camera there.
Yeah. But we never actually see anything, do we?
No, we don't. We don't. And for the first time, she gets so close that her whole head is taking up the screen. And she says, I'm not alone. And she smiles. And this it's the first time in a long time that anyone in this movie has smiled. And she seems, I don't know about happy. I think it's how it's traditionally played of like madness happy. Like she's lost it. But she's laughing at something that ordinarily wouldn't be funny. She's smiling at something that wouldn't be joyful. And then it cuts away, and we don't see whatever entity that was. She embraces it. She literally reaches out and embraces it. And it's creepy. Kawashima goes to look for her. He goes to her apartment building to ask her if she will live with him so they can balance each other out. If she doesn't want to leave, can they live in the same place so they can, check on each other and keep each other balanced? And there's no one in her apartment building. The corridors are empty. He leaves and he starts walking along a road, and there are no people. So he's walking along a street in Tokyo. It looks like more of a back road, to be fair. It's not, the main drag, but there's nobody. There's no people until he finally runs into Mishi, and this is where the storylines converge. Yay! Finally! Because Mishi also is a very vibrant character,
Yeah. She's very likable.
She's very likable. She's very full of life. She wears much more drab colors, but it's not reflective of her personality, it doesn't seem like. She says, she went to check on her mother. We never find out what happened, if she found her mother and is leaving, or if her mother was not there. She said car trouble. Kawashima helps her fix the car, and she says that she'll help him find Haruo. And so they drive. This is the last stop. Yeah. After that, we'll go as far as we can. I can sort of see the future, and I'm not sure what he means by that. If he's just predicting that they're just going to go as far as they can, that maybe this won't take long, I don't know. I'm not sure what compels him to stop there and think this is the place to look for Haruo. But they do, and it's the same factory where Haruo had seen the woman throw herself off the top level in a shot that's incredibly well done. I don't see the scene between the stunt woman covering her face and the dummy going over the edge. They go inside and they see Haruo, and she's got the black bag on her head, which echoing the man that had been sitting in a room that said, "Help me." Yeah. Oh, no, I know. I'm sorry. I'm pulling us out of the moment here, but the reason they go to the factory is because when they go to Haruo's apartment to look for her, and they find "Help me" written on her wall in her bedroom, and through the window of her bedroom, the abandoned factory is visible.
Right.
They go to the factory. She's got the bag on her head, and she eventually pulls it off, and Kawashima says, "Let's get out of here together." And but she's just too far gone, and she shoots herself in the head. And there's no blood, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't really know what the rating system's like in Japan.
There's not really any blood anywhere else, is there?
No, I mean, you've got the guy at the start, obviously hangs himself, and that's brutal sort of makeup effect, and the woman that jumps off the roof, they're the only sort of, deaths, I suppose, that you see on screen. So maybe that was a choice to keep the rating down or something like that.
I guess it must have been. Yeah, because the woman who throws herself off, you see a shadow on the pavement after she's gone, but you never see any blood. I guess that's what they went with. I tell myself that it's even beyond that Haruo is like so far into the spirit realm already that she doesn't have blood. I don't know. Okay. Maybe. But I might be reaching. Kawashima and Mishi are about to leave, but realize that the car is out of gas. Why? This is the worst choice ever made in this movie. Kawashima goes back into the factory to find fuel by himself. Why is anybody going anywhere by themselves at this point in the film? I don't understand why Mishi didn't insist. Kawashima.
Well, this is it. He's made so many right choices through this film, and then literally at the end he makes this choice. So he knows at this point what these forbidden rooms are, from my
or at least he knows that they have something to do with ghosts.
Yes. The lid off the can rolls into this forbidden room. Yeah. And he goes after it. It's like, just fucking leave it.
Yeah, I know. Who cares? You get a little petrol on your pants, that's fine. Yeah. Just go. Take it and go. The car only needs a gallon to get to the waterfront where they're heading. But he goes in, and the door shuts behind him, and a ghost appears. And says, "Death was eternal loneliness. Help. And Kawashima just backs away from him and says, "What's that got to do with me? I refuse to acknowledge death." And then he decides, he remembers the boy in the library. He decides that if he tries to catch the ghost, it will disappear. He tries to catch it, and he does. His hands go right onto the ghost's shoulders. And he backs up, and the ghost comes and bends close to him. And in this really, I'm not sure how they did it. It's probably deceptively simple, but this ghost that's so shadowy and blurry, the eyes come into sharp focus. Honestly, I think it might be the most sharply focused thing in the whole film. And it looks at him, and Michi finally comes looking for him. She gets him up and leads him away, and something was starting to seep out of him onto the floor. He's responsive, but as if he's extremely sleepy. Michi drives him she's heading for the waterfront. She thinks that's their best bet. She'll go, they'll get on a boat, they'll get out of the city. And she drives them through the bigger streets of Tokyo, and they are empty. They make it to the waterfront. Kawashima is in bad shape, but he still wants to go. Michi goes into the nearby building, and as she's going in, this massive cargo plane crashes. And this is like an older style American military plane crashing.
Yeah.
Again, we're bringing back the World War II imagery. It's on fire. It crashes. Shockwave comes back toward her, and she gets pushed down, but she's able to get up again. Goes into the office of the shipyard to find the key, and there are skeletons in there. I'm not sure why. There are these skeletons and ash, because no one else who has faded out has left these kind of remains behind. So I'm not sure if it's meant to imply that they sort of flash burned when the plane crashed nearby, or what, because the office is not on fire.
No. I found that whole sort of plane crash and that bit with the skeleton, it seemed like it was sort of thrown in because they could.
I think it could
almost.
It could be.
It was, although it was really good effect and it was quite realistic, I suppose. It was maybe a little bit clunky in places, but it's a good visual, definitely.
It is. It's stunning. It's a really remarkable visual, but it's sort of it's not a hat on a hat. It's just, not quite, but it is. I don't know that it's necessary at this point.
No.
It can just be empty or just have, shadows on the walls where people were. But anyway, she goes in, she gets the boat key. She and Kawashima make it to the cargo ship, and it sort of cycles back to what we saw at the start of the movie. Michi's looking over the railing. The captain comes to talk to her. She asks the ship captain if she's doing the right thing by keeping going, and he says yes. Michi goes back to her cabin that she's sharing with Kawashima, who is sitting kind of propped up against the wall with his eyes closed. And even as she looks at him, he's starting to fade. And she thinks, now, alone with my last friend in the world, I have found happiness. And Kawashima disappears completely, leaving a shadow on the wall. And then we see the last shot is an overhead shot of the nearly empty boat. And this is why, this is why I'm left with such a profound sadness at the end of this movie, because we love Kawashima, and he was the one who was so invested in staying alive, and even he couldn't hold on. Even he couldn't find the will to keep living. And, that's why I feel like you have to be in an emotionally resilient place to watch this film, because that just really, it kind of takes it out of me.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think it affected me quite so profoundly, but then I think I'm a little bit more of an introvert and don't mind having my own space.
Right. I'm very much an extrovert, so, I get energized by being with people. So being somewhere where there's not a lot of people. I mean, if it's my own space, if it's my home, that's fine. But anywhere else, I get kind of freaked out if there aren't enough people. It weirds me out. But yeah, so not sorry to do like an entire walkthrough of the film, but honestly, to me, it's liminal to liminal to liminal to liminal space and state in this movie. Yeah,
and I think to sort of maybe start sort of wrapping up the two parts of this podcast, I would say that in terms of the subject and the prose of this episode, your choices probably fits that bill a hell of a lot better, because you have got so much liminal space within a 2-hour film. It changes, I think, where this is maybe different to what you could probably call your standard sort of Japanese horror, you know, your Rings and your Grudges. You know, you've got this malevolent force or these ghosts that you're not necessarily sure from the beginning what they want and what the end game is for them, but it's reasonably standard in those films. This film changes course quite a bit, really, because it does, you know, the first third is very much a traditional sort of Japanese horror. You've got all that sort of creepiness, you've got these malevolent beings, but then, you know, it does go into these themes of death and loneliness and depression, and then you've got this final act, this sort of apocalyptic final act that I didn't expect the film to go to that. So it's a hell of a lot deeper than that traditional Japanese horror.
Yeah, and in that final act, they kick the score up a notch. Like, it goes back to, there's a piece of the score at the very beginning of the film, and then it comes back at the end when they're sort of racing through Tokyo to get to the docks. That's very, it reminded me a lot of Bernard Herrmann, you know, in his work for Hitchcock. It's very string heavy, very dramatic, very propulsive kind of sound. That it doesn't make it, I wouldn't say it makes it actiony, but it gives it sort of this added oomph that I think it needs at the end, just to give it that sort of last little push to get you through, you know, at least at the very end. Michi is still there. I haven't thought of it. Maybe by saying that she's with her last friend in the world, maybe it's just wishful thinking of, you know, his spirit still being near her.
Well, that's I got that vibe from the end. Because I didn't necessarily think that in that moment he was disappearing for her. I thought that that had happened before, or just as they got on the ship before they started this journey, and that was her seeing him again, and that he was always going to be there with her, and her not forgetting him, kind of thing. That was my interpretation.
That works for me. That helps make the ending just a little bit better. And there's a little hint of hope that they're going someplace where there are people, you know, maybe they can turn this around somehow.
I would say that your choice fits the bill better than mine, but I am not going to sit here and say.
But is it more enjoyable?
No. Yeah. It's about. I mean, Paul. I thought it was a very good film, Paul's, but it did drag in places for me, and it had to, I suppose, just to sort of fit the bill.
It is a little slow here and there.
There are a few bits of sort of visual exposition, I suppose, that could have been trimmed out a little bit. But I think it is a very poignant film.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, poignant. And it's
but
definitely...
it doesn't have naked Sam Neill. No,
that's true. That's true. Although technically he's not naked. He's covered in latex with makeup appliances all over him. And it doesn't have, you know, somebody getting sucked out into space. It doesn't have, giant Hellraiser tunnel to meat grinder looking engine room.
No sadomasochistic orgies.
No orgies at all, sadly. It's just...
And I'll tell you what it doesn't have, and I'll tell you what Event Horizon doesn't have as well, and that is a connection to the X-Files. Unfortunately.
Really?
But, yeah, I searched and searched and searched, and I could not find anything. I even looked at cast and crew. The closest I got was, because Pulse was remade, an American remake.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
No. I hear it's terrible.
I looked at the trailer and it does look pretty terrible, to be fair. But there was an actor in that. Zach Grenier, He's been in a few things. You'd know his face if you saw him.
Okay.
But he was in the American remake of Pulse. He was in an episode of season 8 called Alone, where he played Herman Stites, who was a doctor who'd managed to turn into a lizard.
Okay.
It was a later episode.
Yes, 8 and 9 were not the best.
No. But that's the closest I got. So it's still something, kind of. I by hook or by crook, I'm going to keep this going. But yes, I'd concede this one, I think. Based on the subject, not on the film.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I can't say that I was turned around into thinking that Event Horizon was a better liminal space film. I liked it. I like it. I liked Event Horizon. I enjoyed my rewatch. I was very surprised, actually, at how a lot of the effects hold up. It's mostly just the compositing that's the problem between the green screen and the models. They didn't have camera stabilization was a problem, where some of the models actually wobble when they're supposed to be still in space. Doesn't look great when that happens. It's like, you couldn't hold it still while you're shooting. You didn't think maybe another take would have been good here. Like I said, the practical effects, the production design, the acting. I think Sam Neill, either he's overdoing it a little bit, or there's just not enough context of him before he starts going over the edge to give him an arc. It makes him, because they don't have that, it makes him seem over the top from the beginning, whereas the other characters are more grounded.
I mean, my other considerations, which you'll know because I went back and forth on a few of these.
Yes.
Jacob's Ladder, which I think would have probably fitted better than Event Horizon, to be fair. Cabin in the Woods, which was maybe a little bit of a stretch, but again, a very enjoyable film. And the other one that I considered quite late on was a Turkish film called Baskin.
Oh, yes. I've seen that once. I only remember bits of it, but it's disturbing.
Yes. I would have had to rewatch that, though, and I didn't really have the time to do that, because I remember there being, when this group of policemen go to wherever it is they go to, and there's obviously a clear point where they go over the threshold into, and I would have considered that maybe some kind of liminal space, because they go to investigate wherever they're investigating, and then things take a turn. But like I say, I would have had to rewatch that. But I remember enjoying it. I just can't remember some of the finer details that would have made it perhaps a liminal space.
Yeah,
horror.
As I said, I actually did rewatch Stalker. And Session 9, I was so tempted because I literally live the next town over from where it was shot. So it's the Danvers Mental Hospital. They filmed in that building. That adds a lot to the atmosphere of the film, to film in this abandoned space. But
I never know what happened to Peter Mullen. He sort of had a big sort of splurge of films around that time. I think that was 2001 as well. I think Session 9, if I remember right.
Somewhere around there.
A little bit later. And he's had some really interesting roles. There was a film called My Name is Joe, where he plays an alcoholic.
Okay.
That's a really good film. And a film called Tyrannosaur, which I would thoroughly recommend. That's a British film. It's directed by Paddy Considine.
Oh, okay.
Who was King Veneris in House of the Dragon.
Yeah, and he's also one of the Andes in Hot Fuzz, and
he is, yes.
He's in The World's End, which is underrated, if you ask me.
Yes. Have you seen? He's in Dead Man's Shoes as well. Have you seen that?
I have not. I will have to look for that. Let me write that down.
Well, thank you very much again, Nicole.
Thank you for having
joining
me again. Thank you for indulging me.
So hopefully you'll come back. And,
absolutely, anytime.
My choice of subject next time we'll think of something hopefully equally as interesting.
Worst video games was interesting. Worst video game adaptation was interesting.
Oh yes, I suppose. Interesting in a more positive way than next time.
Okay. I'll give you that.
So before we sort of wrap things up, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Can anybody sort of get hold of you through social media or anything like that? Is there anything that you would like to pass on to the listeners?
Well, you can listen to Movie Go Round through almost any podcast app, or you can go directly to our website at mgrpodcast.com. We are currently refurbishing, let's say. We are retooling in preparation for a relaunch. And so you can find us there for the moment. We've got 180 back episodes that you can go through. And then I have a Letterboxd page, and that is Nicole_Davis.
Just leaves me to remind everybody that you can reach out to us at Movie Duel Podcast. You can visit the Facebook page. You can reach us at movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. Any suggestions or any feedback for us? If you would like to be a co-host on the Movie Duel Podcast, then again, just get in contact with us. We'd be very grateful if you could leave us a little rating and review on the whatever platform you listen to us on. It will help us to start gaining some extra listeners, and it'd be nice to get the feedback as well. So until next time, it just leaves me to say goodbye, and for Nicole to say,
you can't leave. She won't let you.